This is the Shadow Chronicles podcast. We are here to take a deep dive into the inner work, generational trauma, and your shadows. Having those hard conversations so you don't have to. You know, all of that shit that just does not get spoken about. In the third drawer down, in the dark, hidden away. My name is Sky and I'm a shadow integration specialist. I am here to help guide you on your journey to unfuck yourself by integrating your shadows, healing the generational trauma so you can vibrate with confidence and just fucking love your life.
And my name is Todd, who's an integrative health coach. I help people own more of who they are, change their lives on many different levels to become who they really are. Find your compass and follow it, to say it simply.
And welcome back.
Sup?
Sup? we got a little bit of an interesting one today, I think. So I know when...
We do. Do we want to actually do some updated follow-ups of last episode based on what we were just talking about? Or is that just, you know, that's like when people sign up to the Patreon and all that sort of stuff, they get extra bonus features?
We have a Patreon?
No.
Oh, good question.
You know what?
I reckon
It's probably going to come up in a kind of vaguely natural way anyway.
Yeah, I think so too. So,
Because I don't want to start an episode with a rant.
but that's how I start all of them. But that's just me.
Oh, okay, I don't want to start with my rant. How about that? Is that better?
Yes, that's better.
Okay.
I know when we were birthing this podcast, because it was like an actual birth process.
Yeah, It started off as something else and then it turned into this and it turned into that. And
that's it. And we were, you know, collaborating on ideas of what to talk about, topics, all of the things. I was going through something as well as my son. So my son was going through something and then I was sort of like, oh my God, what the hell? And it sort of really brought something up for me because in a sense, like what he was going through at school and then, you know, the bullying that I copped outside of that, it was like, you know, we expect children to put up with shitty behaviour and then wonder why they turn into little people pleasers as adults. Or, you know, the pendulum swings the whole ass other direction and they become, you know,
douchebags.
Yeah. And all that.
Or bullies themselves.
Yeah, and never in my life did I ever think that I was going to have to try and teach my son about codependency, people-pleasing and, you know, like what friends are and what friends are not.
Yeah. And
I was having to do that, and he's 9.
I don't think that's a bad thing, though.
No.
In a way, it's disappointing that that's a thing that you have to categorically, specifically, intentionally teach, as opposed to a thing that he just progressively appreciates on his own terms.
Yeah.
But hearing how, I don't know if you sort of told him like what your story was like as a kid, and it's like, this is what I learned.
Yeah.
This is what I tried to do. This is why it didn't work. And these are the things that I had to learn about to figure out why it didn't work.
Yeah.
What if you tried this? And like, it's like wisdom and life lessons.
Yeah. So I didn't necessarily like tell him, you know, all of that sort of stuff.
This is the Webster Dictionary definition of codependency.
You know, but I did also explain to him that, you know, like I went through a very similar thing at a very young age, and I ended up doing, you know, what he was doing essentially as well in a way, and, you know, placating and just, you know, doing whatever they wanted me to do just to, you know, just so you wouldn't put up with the crap, you know, just so you didn't get the crap. Or just so people would like me and all of that sort of stuff.
Sorry, I'm not laughing at you. I'm just remembering that episode of South Park where Mr. Garrison's telling that Damien kid, "Oh, you just be overly nice," and everyone will like you. And just like, you know, how'd that work out? He got spat on.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
and obviously that's not something that I ever wanted for my children. It was, you know, like I was even having a conversation with a friend of mine who's having a similar issue with one of his daughters at the moment. And he's just like, I'm a man and I'm trying so hard to teach my daughters just to, you know, love themselves for who they are, you know, be comfortable in their own skin and all this sort of stuff. And, you know, like they're coming home, the same thing with like my son coming home, like, Mom, why is he doing this? Mom, you know, what, and all this sort of stuff. And when all this sort of stuff was going, so I'll give you some content just so you kind of know what's happening. So unfortunately, my eldest son, you know, came across like a pretty nasty bully this year. It was something that had been going on for like 18 months. So like last year as well, but it progressively got worse. And even last year, you know, I'm very strong, I guess, in a way of teaching both my boys, especially my eldest who is a neurodivergent, you know, like me, on how to place boundaries down, how to recognize when he's getting overwhelmed, how to, you know, all of those sort of things. And
self-regulation.
Yeah. And so when he's getting overwhelmed or when he's noticing that, to say no, to say stop, you know, to say, leave me alone, please, like all of those sort of things. And this started obviously when, you know, he would say no or leave me alone or I don't want to do that. And, you know, this other child would push and push and push and push. And in the end, you know, my son would snap and, you know, like lash out, all of those sort of things. I'd had constant conversations with teachers and stuff who saw all this unfold and didn't actually like stop it. And I'm like, what the fuck? Like you saw all this, you saw he was overwhelmed, you saw he was saying no, but you didn't pull this other child up to say, hey, you need to respect this person's or this child's boundary.
Like that stuff's wild enough. The bit when you told me this story, the thing that I found wild is the interaction with this kid's mum.
Oh, yeah. So
I know you're getting to it, but it's like that's a different level.
Yeah. So, you know, and that was sort of like, you know, the worst of it last year. And then obviously this year it just progressively got worse. And like my son would come home one day and be like really upset that this kid doesn't like him and then be okay the next day because they were friends again. And yes, I know that happens sometimes.
Sometimes it's a kid thing.
It's a kid thing, you know, and all this sort of stuff. They're learning, you know, they're learning. But this was like a constant thing, you know, and my husband and I, well, like in the end, we were just like, I'm like, dude, this kid is clearly not your friend. Like if he was your friend, he wouldn't be attacking you one day and then being nice to you the next and you know, vice versa. And we were trying to talk to him, like we were trying to say, hey, like go hang out with other people, you know, and all this sort of stuff. And, you know, and he had this really like one beautiful friend who like brought him out to me like crying one day from school and all sorts of stuff. And I'm like, hang out with that kid. Yeah. Like that kid is a friend. Like you were upset and you were crying and he, you know, dropped his bag and walked you to me at the front of the school so you didn't have to be by yourself. Like that's a good friend. You know, that, you know, can you see the difference in behavior there? And, you know, so obviously he started hanging around with this other kid more, which, you know, annoyed his bully. Yeah. Because you can gather, right?
He's my toy. How dare you?
Right. And, you know, this went on and on and on and on. And then what happened was this kid's mum actually reached out to me and was like, I need to talk to you about your son. And I'm like, yeah, cool. What's up? You know, and then she would tell me and I'm like, oh, wow. Okay. So, you know, I voice messaged back because I was like, this is not going to sound great in a text message. Yeah. So I
need some tonality.
Yeah. I'm a sledgehammer at the best of times. And, you know, and so I voiced my concerns back. And like this woman literally harassed me for 3 hours with non-stop messages.
I remember.
Of like, oh, he was doing this and he was doing that. And I'm like, you know, you need to make it stop. And I'm like, what? And then so and I will 100% admit my child can be a butthole sometimes. Like, and I said, look,
it's a job description for small children.
Yeah, but I'm also like 100% anti-bully. Like if I find out you're the one being a bully kid, like you're going to have like me to contend with because like this is not okay.
My best mate, he's gone out of his way to tell his kids, look, it's one thing to be bullied. Yeah. I'll help you with that. But if I found out that you've been bullying other kids, you'd best not come home.
Right.
Because it's not going to work out.
Yeah, exactly. And so this woman was harassing me. And like to the point where I was just like, wow, like I know where this kid gets it from. Like, because she would not stop. Even though I said, look, stop, this is done. Like, it's not happening, and she was like trying, and she was just like pretty much saying that my son was hurting hers and all this sort of stuff. Granted, like her son's like twice the size as my child.
Literally.
And I was just like, okay, this doesn't make any sense. So I was asking Denzel, who, denied the whole thing, like said yes to some things. Oh, I did this, but I didn't do that. So I'm like, well, I've said to this child's mum, I'm like, well, he's admitted to this, but not to that. So why would he lie? Like, because he's, about,
Like I've met your boy as well. He strikes me as being a fairly upfront kid.
He can definitely be a fairly upfront kid. So in the end, like there was a whole investigation pulled out because this woman had like broken school's code of conduct by reaching out to me and harassing me, and I've sent all the messages and all this sort of stuff to the school, and then like I said to my child, I was like, do not hang around with him. If he comes up to you, walk away, all of this sort of stuff.
Do what you got to do, right?
Stay away from him because I know that you're the one being bullied here, and she wasn't willing to actually accept her son's role in this situation. So I said, the only way that I can gather to have you stop lashing out in defense is to just completely remove yourself. I said, if you have to tell him that I've told you that you're not allowed to hang around with anymore, do it. I don't care.
Make it your fault.
Yeah, throw me under the bus. I don't care. So he did. He threw me on the bus. And then again, I was getting harassed that day. Oh, my son's really upset because, Denzel said that he said that he was like, that I'd told him that. He was like, I'm like, yeah, I did tell him that he wasn't allowed to hang around with your child. You wanted this to stop. I made it stop. Yep. And the thing that got me was she was so adamant to keep this relationship alive. Like, I'm willing to let this go because I know they're such good friends, and do you really want to throw this friendship away and all this sort of stuff? And I'm like going, if my child was severely traumatizing yours to the point where, how my child is reacting, why the fuck would you want him to hang around? I'm like, I'm doing everything within my power to get this child away from mine. Like, and so it was like, it was super interesting because then, I went to the school and had a conversation with the school about it and all this sort of stuff. And the stuff that they were not willing to do, essentially, is bullshit. Like, I was just like, this child is, traumatizing is a bad word, but harassing other kids. It wasn't just my child. Like, there was a few other kids involved.
I remember, like, that was the wildest part about it.
Yeah. It was just like, but their consequence for that was really nothing.
Unfortunately, sometimes when it's a he said, she said, or whatever version, it's like, oh, well, he said this, well, he said that. And it's like how do you, like, fairly pull that apart? But the thing, like throughout the whole story, especially, like, in your retelling of it, because, I was sort of talking to you about this stuff at the time as well. It was like the adamantness by which this other boy's mum was saying, oh, do you want to throw this friendship away? It's almost like, regardless of the reasons as to why your son and hers were butting heads, however we want to say it, she recognized that maybe her son didn't have any friends either. Yeah. Because who wants to hang out with the bully? And is quite prepared to either obliviously overlook things or completely overlook them in the face of her son having a friend, even if he treats him like shit.
Yeah. And, like, I think you're right. and then also like at the end of the communication when I just finally said, look, you know, it was like 9:30, 10 o'clock at night by this stage. I was like, fucking just leave me alone. Just stop.
Yeah.
Like, I'm done.
This is not better.
You know, and I said, I'm not willing to talk to you about this because you're not willing to actually acknowledge and be accountable for your son's role in this. I will 100% hold my son accountable for what he's done. And then to which the investigation that was called actually found like that my son was actually telling the whole truth. Everything that happened to this other child happened out of, you know, retaliation. He was pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed all the way to the point where he couldn't be pushed anymore. And he, you know, used his words. He told the teacher, like he did everything that I told him to do.
Yeah.
And then, you know, what had happened was like a retaliation. But then also what had happened was this child had also like grossly over-exaggerated everything and completely lied. And when his mum was, you know, being painful to me, like the very last message was literally the fact that this child had gone through trauma with his dad. And I was like, yeah, cool. Like, I completely understand that, but that doesn't bypass
douchery.
Like, you know, as an adult, you know, like a few episodes ago, we were talking about like, you know, your trauma doesn't give you a free pass to be an asshole. And the same with a child, unfortunately. And yes, way harder with a child because, you know, their frontal lobes aren't developed and, you know.
All of the above.
But they still need to be taught that, okay, you know, what's happening is sucky and hopeful. And this is the hard thing as well. I highly, highly doubt that this child's mum actually was doing anything proactive about having, you know, this trauma to be resolved or be healed.
The point that I made before is effectively enablement at that point.
Yeah.
It's like, I just want my son to have friends. They need to give a shit about the quality of the interaction.
Yeah.
Just have someone to hang out with. Like,
you know, and then if shit goes sideways, it's like, oh, he's gone through this. And I'm like, well, I'm sorry. And it's not my son's responsibility to emotionally regulate your child. It's not anyone's child's responsibility to emotionally regulate the emotions and the triggers of another child. It's your responsibility as a parent to help your child process and overcome this trauma so they don't become the one thing that they don't want to become, which is, you know, the thing that hurt them.
Yeah. The awkward thing is that we're talking about parents having a modicum of self-awareness about what they're teaching their child. And judgy as fuck as this might sound, like how many of us are actually present with that, really? But that's ultimately your ability to put your hand up is ultimately dependent on your investment in doing that for yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
Because if you hadn't have done that, would we be having this conversation about your son?
No.
That's the point. So it's like, if you're not prepared to invest that kind of effort and self-awareness into figuring out why you're enabling shit or doing all this sort of stuff, how on earth are you going to teach anyone any different?
Yeah. I think it's parents, and I think a lot of the schools as well, because I've heard this story so many fucking times, you know, about the child that gets bullied and then that child finally fucking snaps because they've had enough, retaliates, and then that's the child that gets in trouble. And it's like, you know, like as I said, like we expect children to put up with shitty behaviour and then wonder why they turn into people pleasers as adults. Oh, why are you putting up with that shitty behaviour? I'm like, well, every time I fucking lashed out and stood up for myself as a child because I was putting up with shitty behaviour, I got in trouble. Every time I went home to my parents to tell them, they would just brush it off like it's nothing. You know, and every time I went to the teachers to try and tell them what was going on, the other kid will obviously lie about it or say, and then, as you said, it turns into a he said, she said thing.
And you can't.
And it's very hard to police that, you know, but then there is also no investigation. So one of the reasons why, like, so with this whole thing with my eldest, I actually yanked him out of the school that he was in because I was like, this school is clearly not, like, the bullying was like the icing on the cake. You know, there was a whole bunch of other stuff that happened before that. And I'm like, it's really, you know, not having my child's best interest at heart, my child's education, support, care, like all of the things.
Mm-hmm.
So I ended up yanking him out of the school and putting him in a new school. And like when I was reading through, because obviously his old school, you know, when you read through, we have a, you know, 0 tolerance for bullying. And I'm like, fucking wank, whatever. Like, don't give me that crap. And I was reading the same, like the policies for the new school that I put him in. And like they were going through all of the different types of bullying.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, this is interesting. So they were going through this and they're going through that. And I'm like, okay, cool. And then it got down to like covert bullying, which is the stuff that happens behind teachers' backs or the parents or, you know, the adults. And they stipulated, to which they've proven too, that if a child reacts and it's not in their nature, they will do an investigation on why that child reacted before, you know, serving out any sort of consequence for that. And I was like, oh, really now? That's good to know. And, you know, the same thing. So, you know, like my son in the school, because you're going to get fucking twits anywhere you go. Like I explained that to my child and I'm like, I'm sorry, mate. It doesn't matter where you're going to go. There's somebody that's not going to like
I've
you.
had that conversation with my boy like a few times now. It's like, I can't make excuses for everyone, kiddo. You're just going to meet that person who makes no fucking sense to you.
Yeah. And like, you know, because my son's dyslexic, he was having trouble one day, like reading in front of the class, and he was having lots of struggles, and obviously all the kids then laughed at him, and he got upset and lashed out. And so he was spoken about obviously with emotional regulation and stuff like that, because he is going to see someone once a week for emotional regulation skills and techniques and all of the things. But every other kid that laughed at him, they got in trouble. He didn't. And I was like, oh, thank God. Like, you know, granted, yes, lash out. And I spoke to him about that. Like, you know, you know, they didn't make you angry. You chose anger as a response. You know,
it's an understandable response.
Yeah.
It doesn't make it okay.
It's an understandable response. But, you know, like as I've spoken to him about it beforehand, like if you hold on to all of that and you don't regulate it correctly and you lash out, you'll hurt someone that actually doesn't deserve to be hurt. So, and he goes, and I'm like, is that fair? He's like, no. I said, well, then it's your responsibility to, you know, walk away, go to a teacher, come to me when you're feeling these things, so you can, like, you know, let it out in a more healthy way, so you don't actually use that as a weapon. Yeah. And yeah, so that's, you know, something that we, you know, have a conversation about quite a lot. But I just found it very interesting, you know, going through this process, as well as, like, you know, hearing friends, family, you know, having similar processes, and really, like, nothing's really done about it, if that makes sense, whether that's on the school's part, as you said, like the parents are just fucking not self-aware to even realize what the hell is actually going on and why.
I reckon mostly that, at least that aspect, is a convenience thing. So why don't people ask themselves important, pertinent questions about who they are and who they're being?
Because that's hard.
That. Let alone doing that about how those decisions that you make within yourself, or indeed lack thereof, might be teaching the smaller human version of you lessons about what it is to regulate or manifest yourself in the world.
Yeah.
And the interactions with everyone else. It's like, why wouldn't that person want to bury their head in the sand? Because there's the layered effect of, like, if I have to address my child's behavior, maybe I'm going to have to ask myself, where did they learn that shit from? Is he just a bad egg, or is there something else going on?
No, children model.
But that's my point.
There's no such thing as a bad egg.
That's my point. Is, like, there are very few other conclusions to come to trailing that thought process down
Mm.
if you start it. If you don't start it, well, no, it was someone else's kid. Oh, no, it's just a bad day. Oh, no, it's just his dad was a dick, or all of the above. It's like, it's the proverbial ostrich head in the sand.
Yep.
So I don't want to deal with that. And then some schools do that as well. It's like what you just described at your boy's new school.
Yeah.
So no. There's causes and effects.
Yeah.
So rather than just deal with the microcosm of this one singular event, what's the context?
Yep.
Why did this happen? Because if we don't know, well, how do we solve it so that this isn't a thing that comes up again and again and again and again and again?
Exactly. You know, rather than waiting for the dust to settle and then like sweeping it under the rug, which is what his last school was doing essentially. And then, you know, none of the behavior actually changed. Nothing actually changed. It was like, granted, it's like knowing it's primary school, knowing like, all of the things, like as you said, like it, you know, a lot of the times, and fucking hard truth, it comes down to how that child is being raised. And if that child is being raised in a chaotic environment or a traumatic environment, he's going to, or she's going to lash out at people smaller and weaker than them, because that is their sense of control.
It's a definitive level of power that you can invest in and feel good about.
But
you can't not win. Almost.
And this is where it's interesting, because as I said, like then we expect then children to put up with shitty behaviour. Or such and such was doing this, you know. Oh, that they, you know, she said, oh, they're just having a bad day.
I'm glad you brought it back to that, because the more you were talking, the more I was like, you know, the most recent like government ads about like.
I don't watch a lot of TV. Oh, okay, I lie. I watch a lot of like trash TV.
There's a lot of ads that have been about the lessons you teach kids about alcohol. Yeah. And
yes, I have
seen
those.
As an example. It's like, oh, kiddo, get me a beer.
Yeah.
And it's like the normalization of that. But there's more recent ones about like, talk to your kids about talk to your sons about how they interact and think about women and girls. Yeah. Right? But even sort of pulling back from that. So like the old, our boys will be boys.
Yeah, fucking bullshit.
That. But this context, as I say, our kids will be kids.
Yeah.
Like, okay.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, so they're learning and stuff like that.
There's that, but it's like when there's a pattern.
Yeah, there's a pattern. There's a difference between a child and an adult as well, like making a mistake, you know, lashing out, doing whatever else, and then having remorse and then changing that behavior, learning that that's not okay, or they don't want to be like that. That's cool. Like, you know, and this is the same thing, something that I like was trying to also, you know, teach my son, because he was just going through this like on the daily, that any other interactions that were happening, you know,
became something they didn't need to be.
Yeah, it became something that they didn't need to be. And, you know, and he had this one altercation with this kid where he got really hurt, which is when his other friend brought him out to me crying. Yeah. And, you know, this other kid's mum, the one that was harassing me, was also harassing this kid's mum. And I was just like, oh my fucking God, I have to like reach out to her too and go, I've got nothing. Like, you know, pretty much saying that I was the one, you know, like whatever. And I was like, I called this woman to go, I'm so sorry, but I had nothing to do with that. And we ended up having this really cool discussion, and I found out the altercation that happened between her child and my child, he went home crying. Yeah. He went home like he was very sorry and stuff like that. So I had to go to him and go, hey, mate, you know, this kid was crying because he hurt you. That shows of remorse. That shows I made a mistake. That shows, you know.
Very sorry.
Yeah, and he's very sorry for that. That's a forgivable thing. You're allowed to go, you know what, cool, like, you know, mistakes happen, we're good. Yeah. This other kid, like, and I said, you like blacklisted this child for this one thing, but you're letting this other one, which was like happening on the daily, back into your circle. I said, that's not okay. That is not a friend. That is someone that is using you. And, you know, for whatever reason, like, you know, you were wanting to, you know, be liked. I get it, mate. Like, you're like my child. I love him to pieces. He's beautiful, but he is literally one of the smallest kids in class. Granted, he's in his school, he's not, which is great. But in his last school, he was the smallest. He was the skinniest. He was, like, I'm not the hugest person. My husband's not the hugest person.
Oh,
either.
we've made several hilarious jokes on the subject during the podcast.
So my child is not the hugest person in the world. And that's okay. But he got picked on it for it constantly, and so it was one of those, like, the difference between, like, as you said, like a mistake or an accident, and then the change of behavior to the recurring of behavior. So, like, I know, I'm probably sure you've seen the saying, I know I have, like, an apology is not an apology unless there's change of behavior.
Yeah.
And even as children, and that's why,
because it represents a reflection on what happened and why.
Yeah.
And the assessment of the value of that.
So it's, like...
That is the thing. It's like, that's why I brought up the, boys will be boys, like kids will be kids sort of thing. It's like, it's that inclination to write off what you see as an observer of that behavior, so that you don't have to think about maybe what you did to take part in that sort of stuff. I don't know, back in the day, let alone last week at the water cooler at the office or whatever.
And that's it. And, like, even my other half, who is not, not very spiritually inclined. He's a very analytical person and all that sort of stuff, which is, amazing. But even he said, he's like, Sky, this is a toxic relationship. And he must be listening to me way too much. He's like, babe, I don't want to say this, but this child is like a little narcissist.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, he is. And, like, I believe it's really important to teach children the difference between a mistake and a change of behavior or toxic behavior.
Yeah.
And I know, like, there was a group that I was a part of on Facebook. I don't think I'm a part of it anymore because after this woman had put up that, her daughter and it was even younger than my son, and stuff like that. And and this other child, like, and she explained it as being, like, in a toxic relationship, and even she said, like, my daughter has a massive role in this, and, and I want to get her out of it and all this sort of stuff. And, like, she was asking for help and advice, and this woman got fucking slammed. I'll be like, oh, like, how dare you, like, say that children are engaging in toxic behavior? That doesn't happen until they're adults and all this sort of stuff. And I'm like,
how do you think that happens?
Where does it fucking start? Like, honestly, and that's, what I mean when I was thinking about this, when, creating this list, I was just like, everyone is so quick to brush over children's behavior. As you said, like, boys will be boys, kids will be kids, and all this sort of stuff. And they are expecting these kids, these victims of bullies, to just deal with the, I'm sorry, with no actual change of behavior. And then those children are just expected to get over it and just keep going on because, they're children or whatever else. But then obviously that behavior doesn't actually change. When is that, like, line that sort of says, hang on a minute, no, just because you're a kid, that doesn't mean that you can't not be toxic. Granted, like, you learnt it from somewhere, 9 times out of 10 your house.
It could be argued that usually it's less severe as kids. But the irony is that just because the extremity of the toxic behavior might be less severe than what it looks like as teenagers and adults, it still needs the counterbalance of, but the child receiving this behavior is more sensitive and vulnerable and not as sophisticated enough to handle it and be on the other side of it. So it's like, just because the stakes are slightly lower doesn't mean it's okay.
Yeah, exactly. But then, then they grow up into, like, teenagers and adults, and then all of a sudden they're putting up with this behavior, and then they're like...
So normalised.
But that's it. By that stage, it's so normalised granted, it's normalized because it's happened in the home. Granted, then it's normalized because it's happened in the schoolyard too.
Yeah. This is just how life works, right?
It just must be fucking normal.
Yeah.
And then, you know, you get people on the outside going, why are you putting up with that person's shitty behavior? They're abusing you, or they're not good for you, or they're not healthy. And this human being is going, but what?
What are you talking about?
What are you talking about? Hang on a minute. No one gave a flying fuck when I was 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 about, you know, putting up with shitty behaviour. Yeah. And now all of a sudden you give a flying fuck about me putting up with shitty behaviour? Like, make it make sense.
And then, like, that as well, but then that make it make sense, assuming they even get to that place. They're like, what do you fucking know? Like, you weren't there. Like, you know, it's like, why are you judging my childhood or something like that? Like, it almost goes, you become defensive of how you were raised, sort of thing.
Yeah.
Which doubles down on where that ego is comfortable to stay.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm pretty sure we've said this at least a few times before. So just because it's like familiar doesn't mean it's not shitty.
Yeah.
But that's the problem. It's like it becomes a shitty familiar.
Yeah.
A familiar shitty. Yep, that'll do. Both work.
Both work.
But at some point, the familiar becomes more important than the shitty. And this is just who we are now.
Yeah.
And then you have someone sort of point it out to you. It's like humans being what we are, generally.
Generally, yeah.
We'd rather have things predictable and familiar and constant than unknown and different, but potentially better. It's why it could be argued that's why our brains are the way they are. It's like it's wired to make today roughly the same as yesterday. And then hopefully same as tomorrow. What is it, like 78% of the decisions we make on a conscious and subconscious level today are made specifically because they are so automated so that today feels normal like yesterday.
Yep.
And it's like when you sort of put that in the context of this, it's like I feel normal trying to placate everyone around me because
that's all I've ever done.
The lessons that I learnt about I need to do that because I'm clearly a piece of shit.
Yeah.
Based on the behaviours that I've been shown right up to this point.
Yeah.
Necessitate me doing everything I can to prove to everyone else that I'm not a piece of shit, or at least a smaller piece of shit.
Yeah.
That almost becomes you perpetuating that story. Like you learn the lesson long enough. You have those voices in the back of your head chipping away at you for long enough, whether that's parents, bullies,
TV, social
mass media, whatever sort of thing.
Social media.
You eventually adopt it to the point where it just sounds like your voice now, and you mistake that for you and your personality, and you're in a dialogue that, on a very ego-based level, is just who you think you are now, to the point where you go out of your way looking for these people to make you feel normal by treating you like shit.
Mm-hmm. And the cycle continues.
And, like, you know, that's how the conversation about wound buddies and how people get to this point was like, why are you a people pleaser? Because I don't know any other way to be. Why are you a bully? Because this is how I get to feel powerful. Why don't you stop? I don't know how any other way to be. This is just the extent of how I believe human relationships go when it comes to me.
Like,
blah.
Exactly. Welcome to beige. And then,
is there a more offensive colour than beige?
I don't know.
It's like beige with stab wounds in it or something like that.
But and that's like, I don't know. I believe that to fully break the cycle, like it you know, it starts in the home and it starts in the schools and all that sort of stuff, which means that, you know, like appropriate consequences for those boundaries to be crossed, so like bullies and stuff like that to be to happen, you know, that appropriate teaching that, you know, doing this and treating people like this is not actually being powerful. You're actually being the exact opposite. You know,
the child you were describing before. It's like,
yeah.
how else did he learn how to do that?
Yeah, of course.
It's like, well, it worked for that person.
He had a parent that fucking did exactly the same thing to me.
And there's not even bringing up what she was saying about his relationship with his dad.
Yeah, which
like,
I don't know. Cause
all of that shit aside, like, how else do you frame the way the world works beyond what you've been taught by these people who are supposed to be, like, rightly or wrongly, you end up pedestaling them because they're the most important people in your life up till about, what, 13, give or take?
And then you start, like, challenging them.
Yeah, and you're like, hang on a sec.
Yeah.
Maybe they're as weird as I am. Let's find out.
Yeah.
And then you start dyeing your hair funny colours or listening to Marilyn Manson or smoking pot or whatever it happens to be.
Okay, I didn't do that one, but dyeing the hair, the funky colours and stuff.
See, I never dyed my hair, but I did listen to a lot of Marilyn Manson. So.
Yeah, me too. I still listen to Marilyn Manson. What are you talking about? It's like iconic.
Yeah.
Show my age.
Ironically enough.
What?
Looks like he's got some questions to answer when it comes to bullying people as well. Yeah.
Interesting. I've heard stories, but...
Well, without wanting to turn this into a completely different conversation, he distanced himself from his former bassist because it came out that his bassist was proven very guilty of treating his ex-partner very badly.
Oh.
And then 2 years later, a few other stories come out about Marilyn Manson's shit that he pulled in terms of not so much acting against consent, but filming things that weren't appropriate and all this sort of stuff. Yeah, just like not
okay stuff.
Not okay stuff.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Because the irony is that, like, you just everyone's done stupid shit.
Yeah.
Times change. You don't. Maybe, like, the best I can say is you don't know what you've done until someone else calls you out on it, and that might be 30 years later when you're like, yeah, that was actually pretty shitty. But, like, even those figures that we look at to cope with reality and human interaction and to help us make sense of it and to help us feel defiant and powerful, because that's ultimately what that man was about.
Yeah.
It's like bucking the system to
be
this
totally
kind of dude.
Fucking,
It's the whole point of his name.
Yeah.
It's the commentary on the aggrandizement of celebrity.
Yeah.
No matter how you get that, whether you're this, like, iconic diva or a phenomenally well publicized serial killer, because it's almost tantamount to the same. What we were saying before about boys will be boys, kids will be kids, sort of thing. It's like, if we treat everything with that superficial brush, why wouldn't iconic female superstars and how they're treated, and then the comparison between iconic serial killer superstars and how they're treated be inferred as the same? It's more of that human mechanic of wanting to just superficialize everything that enables this shit.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's not until you, like, have a dude like, say, Marilyn Manson, who's going, oh, this guy has different ideas. How do I make sense of that?
Yeah.
It creates the defiance level. And then you realize that, like, a few years later, it's like, no, he was just as lame and as foible and shitty as the rest of us. But it's the ability to sort of recognize that for what it is and still make your own damn decision anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, multiple episodes about that level of self-awareness that you have about yourself and about how you became that version of you and how buried the real version of you, the you want to be, is under that.
Yeah. I think a lot of, like, as you said, that, discovery of that real version, or like that guidance of that real version, comes from teaching children what appropriate behavior is and what appropriate behavior isn't. Teaching them that they're allowed to walk away from people, kids, whatever the case may be, that treat them poorly, and if they don't like it, rather than, you know, again, like as you said, placating it. Oh, you know, like, because granted, it's true, hurt people, like, you know, and like me as a decently aware human being could look at this child's behavior to my son and going, that kid is in pain. But that doesn't make it okay for him to treat other people the way he's been treated.
Yeah.
Because that makes him feel powerful or whatever else. It's also not my responsibility to go, like, you know, and
It's fine. Keep punching my son in the face.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and I'll also like try to explain to my child, like, you know, hurt people, mate. But that doesn't mean that you have to put up with that. That doesn't mean that that makes it okay. That doesn't mean that it's an excuse or a reason. And the more that we help our little ones especially move through this world with that sense of self to say, no, that's not okay. I don't like that. Dong. Like I need a gavel just for symbolism. But that's not okay, rather than, oh, you know, he's just a kid, or, you know, and stuff like that. Like the difference between a mistake and repeated behavior. And the same with, you know, like, and the same when, like, with girls, because girls are just different, and like it's, I know, like my friend his daughter's going through it, and like she's coming home upset, like, am I not pretty enough? Am I not smart enough? Am I not funny enough?
That's slippery.
Yeah,
slope.
right. Like, and you know, she's 11, and this is what she's coming home crying, saying, and he's doing the same thing as I am, like trying to teach and guide her to say, hey, like these kids are saying these things to you, and they're mean to you because they're insecure with themselves, but that doesn't make that okay.
So
yeah.
2 quotes.
What?
Person isn't the behaviour is not the person.
Exactly.
And the other one being, to understand all is to forgive all.
Mm.
Both of those statements are made with the intention of you having enough love within yourself, enough compassion within yourself, enough authenticity, enough empathy to go, I get why they'd be that way. It's not necessarily a personal thing.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean it's okay.
That's it.
And like ultimately that's what you're saying.
Yeah.
Because the other side of it is true. Is like if you just receive shitty behavior, but you aren't invested in understanding why that's a thing.
Yeah.
Maybe you internalize that. It's like, I don't want anything to do with that, but that's fine.
But then
what happens before you push everyone away?
Yeah, it becomes a me thing. Like, I'm the one that's not good enough. I'm the one that's this. I'm the one that's that.
Yeah.
And
because there's no balance of their intentions versus your intentions.
Yeah.
And your energy versus their energy, all that sort of stuff. It's like, this is why the necessity of being present with who you are and the authentic version of what that is. And more often than not, your emotions are what reflect that most authentic, especially when you're that kid.
Yeah.
How many kids know how to do that? How many adults know how to do that?
Well, I was going to say, like, you know, if the percentage of adults that know how to do that is very low, considering that is my profession, to teach people that, to teach people emotional regulation, to integrate the parts, you know, all of that things so they can have that sense of self, you know, it's...
I'm even going to retract what I just said.
Yeah.
Kids know that shit.
They do.
Because that's how they go about their business. Do they understand that is not quite the same thing.
Yeah. They like, you know, that whole saying, like, kids are born pure and stuff like that. Like, it's, you know, and it's that case of the kids are born as their authentic selves. They, you know, like, how they act, how they be at a very, very, very small young age is who they are essentially. It's just like, as you said, like when parents, teachers, schools, bullies, whatever the case may be, social media, you know, says that you're not this if you're that type thing, then they start going, oh, hang on a minute.
There's a polarization to it immediately.
Yeah, like
you start to pigeonhole yourself.
Yeah, and then you start to putting yourself in a box, or, you know, and all this sort of stuff, which then gets, you know, played on and manipulated and whatever the case may be. Yeah, and then, you know, you have children, you have victims, you have bullies, and then
that,
you know, and then you have adults going, she said, oh, they're just kids, just, can't you, like, get over it, or it's, it's not that big of a deal. Like, if your child comes home to you upset because someone is picking on them and you turn around and say it's not that big of a deal, get over it, you need to do some shit. Because, like, that, as you said, that child is slowly
dealing with my child who's upset is too hard basket. How do I sweep that under the rug?
Yeah.
Get over it.
Yeah.
Cool. You expect an 8-year-old to regulate their own emotions.
Right. Well, people expect 8-year-olds to regulate their parents' fucking emotions.
Well, there's that. But I was like, that sounds an awful lot like bullying at that point. It's like,
exactly.
It's just that you're not the one who's teased them all day. You're the one who, dismisses. Anyway.
Yeah,
that.
exactly. So, hello, internalization. Hello, we expect them to put up with shitty behavior. And then, like, as I said, I think not the last episode, the one beforehand or whatever else. And then they grow up into adults, and then all of a sudden their parents are like, why do you hang around with such shit people? Oh, they're moving in the wrong crowd. Wonder why.
Compliant or defiant.
Yeah.
One way or the other.
Fucking wonder why.
So, the clean slate idea. I was listening to some content the other day. It was a child psychology researcher and expert. He was describing how parents aren't the influence that they think they are on their kids. You can't just instill your own personality traits, your thoughts, beliefs into that kid.
No, I think we see the same thing.
Like he was describing is like you could have a mixture of about 400 different personality traits that are just inherent within that child. And the best you can do is act as a shepherd as opposed to someone who corrects and directs. But the other side of it as well is the thing that Jordan Peterson said once or twice, and it makes total sense when you consider what we both do for a living. The vast majority of your personality is coping mechanisms which ideally have been mostly informed by those 400 odd personality traits, that deeper core that is you.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of how that deeper core of you interacts with the lessons you've been taught by the world around you. So when we talk about personal development, the necessity of burning off some of that scaffolding, the 95%-ish of your personality that's coping mechanisms, in order to reveal the deeper core of you so that you can rebuild that out again into a way that works more effectively for you. I can't believe I'm about to say this.
You had that look on my face like I'm going to fucking say something and I don't want to.
Sometimes
Come on, just spit it out.
Sometimes bullying makes you stronger.
Yes, it does.
But pretending like it is always a mechanic by which you are forging the child into something more potent and powerful and more authentic
is bullshit.
Is wildly ambitious.
Yeah. Because
the amount of unlearning and relearning and psychotherapy or chats with Sky that buriedness necessitates sometimes isn't worth the price.
That.
I'll go further than that. Often isn't worth the price. Like what, with your story you've told today and with what you know happened to you, how many other billions of kids have been bullied and have never even considered that had nothing to do with them?
Yeah, that's it. Well, how many children unalive themselves because of that? Like how many, and as you said, how many children go through the full-blown unlearning process, which is hard.
Assuming you get that thought in your head, let alone the support that allows that.
It's constant layers as well. And I'll even I wouldn't say challenge, because I agree with you, but I would almost say it's not necessarily a bully per se that makes you stronger. It's an understanding that not everybody is meant for you, and there's, energetics,
Yep.
auras,
okay.
like whatever that case may be. There's going to be people that don't like you and you're not going to like other people, and that's completely fine and that's completely normal.
And that's part of the reforging. So maybe like the necessity of bullying isn't, this is why it took so fucking long to say it. It's like, it's the reforging of your sense of self process. It's that everything you just described, you find your vibe attracts your tribe, your energy, you like all of those things are the progressional tempering of who you really are.
And
they're the whetstone that progressively forges and sharpens what you are.
So I believe instead of teaching children to just deal with shitty behavior because they're big kids or whatever else, teaching children that rejection is okay. Like one of the core things that I help a lot of people work through is fear of rejection, fear of judgment. And if we teach people that, as long as you're a decent human being and you live up to your authentic self and you're not treating people like a fucking like trash, then, that's cool. But also understanding that some people still are not going to agree with you. Some people are still not going to vibe with you. Some people are still not going to like you, and that is okay. And it's super interesting that you brought this up, because even I messaged my mentor this morning, because I was feeling really overwhelmed and all this sort of stuff, and I'm like, I think I need some guidance. And she's like, what's up? Like support with my business and stuff. And I was just like, I feel because I'm in my business, I'm going through an unlearning process, and I'm moving into more of an alignment process and stuff like that, which means I'm bumping up against, whether it's old shit, my own ego, whatever the case may be. And I'm like, I don't know if I'm just overthinking this. Actually, yes, I know I'm overthinking this. I know there's probably a shadow there. I just need some guidance to say, hey, Sky, you are doing enough. And she's like, yeah, there's a shadow there. Wonder what shadow that is. And I was just like, I sat with it for a second. I'm like, the shadow of never being good enough. Fuck. And I was just like, okay, that's interesting. And always feeling like I've got to convince people that I am good enough. Hello, inner child. And it's just like, woo, because the years and years that I spent being bullied because I was different and I looked different and all this sort of stuff, which is super interesting because I got bullied because I've got lots of freckles, right? And I've seen so many reels on social media of people getting freckle tattoos and freckle makeup and all this sort of stuff. I'm like, bitch, I got fucking annihilated for a good portion of my childhood because I had freckles, and now you guys are doing it on purpose. What the hell? Yeah. And it's just like, if I was taught that was if I was taught that being different was okay, if I was taught that not everyone is going to like me and that is okay, that I was good enough on my own without having to be liked by the masses, then that may have been drastically different to, all the unlearning that I've had to do.
So there's that. Two things. Remember when I had my accident with the bicep tendon?
Yeah, that was me.
Remember about 2 months after that?
You
remember the question I asked you that one day?
No, what was it? Remind me. I'm getting emotional already.
I said, you're still waiting for me to crack the shits at you, aren't you?
Yeah, I was. I remember that. Look, yeah, I was waiting for it.
Why do you think I asked you that question that day?
Probably because I was so used to people cracking the shits at me.
And I could tell. That's why I asked.
Yeah.
It's because it was an accident, mate.
Yeah.
It's a thing. I chose to be there. I chose to do what I did. I chose to prioritize my knees and your back over my bicep tendon.
Yeah.
That's what happened.
Yeah.
I was happy with the consequences.
I wasn't.
Happy's perhaps not the correct word. But that's why I asked.
Yeah.
It's like, no, you need to know where we stand. And it's here.
Yeah.
You're my friend. That's all that matters.
Yeah.
I'm not going anywhere just because I got hurt
Yeah.
one time because of it. That was all it was.
Yeah. Granted, watching you pass out was not fun.
There was a certain amount of shock involved in that,
Yeah.
but it's what it was.
Yeah.
It occurs to me that you're also probably getting a little bit teary about it because you haven't had many people show up for you like that before.
No.
But that's the point.
Yeah.
It's why you bring it up. It's why you tell this story now. It's like,
Yeah.
it's a progressive unlearning of all that old stuff that you've got teammates on your team.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is Team Sky.
Yeah.
Okay. You okay?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay. That was why I brought that up.
Yeah.
That was the first point. The second point I wanted to bring up was, what if, okay, so
What?
it's a completely different subject.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not going to poke you until you cry.
It's okay.
The truth that is there when you say, suck it up, get over it.
Yeah.
It is true.
Yeah.
And we know that. It's like, because if you don't suck it up and make some decisions about the shit that you've got to deal with
Yeah.
and move forward in it, nothing changes.
No.
But there's an energy and an approach and a care, a compassion, an empathy that goes with that is absolutely necessary to actually have it hit in a way that matters.
Yeah.
What if that's what parents are doing? They just don't have the energy or the time or the understanding that how you deliver that message fucking matters.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, quite potentially.
So, like, these parents think they are doing the right thing.
Yeah.
You'll be fine. Get over it.
Yeah.
It's just that they have no real appreciation of how much more there is to that conversation so that that child can actually go, oh, that's what they mean.
Yeah.
They mean, I do need to get over this, but it's not that.
No.
It's not done without care. It's not done without...
Well, it's not done without suppression, I think, because, like, unfortunately, as you said, like, if there's no actual conversation or, you know, if it's just, like, literally, you know, yeah, suck it up, get over it, cup of cement, whatever the case may be, which, granted, yes, you do, you know, need a thick skin.
It's a necessity going through that.
But having an understanding and, like, guidance of, like, yeah, cool, this sucks, you're allowed to be upset, I would be completely upset too. This just shows that this is not your person. Are you willing to be, you know, feeling like this all the time? You know, and if the answer is no, then it's like, okay, cool. Well, do you think this is a valuable person in your life? Do you think you want to be friends with this person anymore? Yeah. And all that sort of stuff. And, like, you know, instead of suppressing, which is essentially what happens when that comment in that energy happens, is just like, you know, shut up, get over it, you'll be fine type thing. You know, we suppress then. We're like, okay, cool. Well, then again, internalize. Well, because I'm reacting and acting like this, there must be something wrong with me because, like, I'm not getting over it.
Yeah.
You know, so we then suppress. And
they dismissed it, maybe I should too.
Exactly.
And that's what's then equated to toughen up, get over it.
Yeah.
It's like, dismiss it.
Yeah.
Dismiss myself, dismiss the circumstances.
Yeah.
Dismiss my reaction to it.
Exactly. Rather than going, okay, cool. Well, yeah, well, no one's actually allowed to treat you like that. You know, you have a choice here whether you know, continue to do this cycle or whether you break it and go, no, I don't want that person to be around me anymore. And that is okay. And if that person doesn't like you and you don't like them, that is okay. That is normal.
Both of those decisions are you getting on with it.
Yeah, exactly. You standing up, you like essentially advocating for yourself and being like, yep, nope, that's it. And that's how we, as you said, get over it rather than suppress it and then have it a thing later on in life that you continue to follow through with all of your relationships and all of that sort of stuff.
Yeah. Why do I keep enabling people in my life that
Treat me like trash.
treat me like trash? Well,
you know, because
that's how, guys.
Yeah, because my parents told me to just get over it and deal with it, and no one actually, you know, gave any sort of consequences to that person. So that means that person wasn't actually doing anything wrong. So,
And that's just the kids you grew up with, let alone what your parents do themselves.
Yeah, and that's
Of course, there's going to be no fucking consequences for them.
Yeah.
What was the name of the author? Sven
Elson.
The teaching unconditional love backwards.
Yeah.
So no. It's like it's your job as the parent to be healed enough to treat that kid as they deserve, not expect that child to just
make you comfortable.
Get over it.
Well, essentially make you comfortable in a way. Like even when my son was going through this, I was really fucking uncomfortable because I knew my child's pain and it was triggering as fuck and it was heartbreaking as hell because it's just like, I know this. This sucks.
And you watch it.
And I'm like, you know, I'm watching it and I'm like, this is what I copped. And it's just you know, even my husband, same thing. Like, you know, and like when we had that conversation about, well, what are we going to do about this? How are we going to advocate for our child? How are we going to make it okay? Like, you know, and we went through that whole process of like, you know, just yanking him out of school is not necessarily going to fix the problem.
No.
But like, you know, the choice was made because of the level of support that this school has for his neurodivergency.
It's a good school.
It's a good school. And it's also the school I wanted him to go to high school at. So it was like,
worked out.
It looks like it, you know, now is the universe telling us like, let's do this now type thing. Yeah. And all of this sort of stuff. And like even my husband like come to me and he goes, we're doing the one thing that we never got. And I was like, huh? And he goes, we are advocating for our child. We're teaching him that this behavior is not okay, that he doesn't have to put up with it, that he doesn't have to get over it and suppress it, that he has the choice to hang around with those people or not, or walk away from them. And that means that there's nothing wrong with him. It means that he's, you know, advocating for his own worth.
I think the important point about everything you've just said is that you had that conversation with him. You didn't just yank him out and teach him that, running away from your problems will fix it. It's we're pulling you out because this is an environment that doesn't facilitate this, this, and this, and this is why we're putting you in this school because it enables this. And like, is that like, even before you press record, there's a difference between authoritative and authoritarian. Yeah, and this is what it is. Like, you just pull him out of his school and put him in a new one. So he doesn't understand the context and why this is an essential and important part of what you chose to do for him as parents. Yeah. So he doesn't appreciate that you are advocating for him rather than just pulling him out of that school, putting him in another one. So it's easier for you guys. Yeah. No. This is about you, kiddo.
Yeah. We also asked him. We asked him what he wanted to do.
And that's that authoritative as opposed to authoritarian. It's like you're making some decisions, but you are very transparent about those decisions, and he gets a part to play in that too because it's his fucking life.
Yeah. That's it.
I can't imagine too many more empowering things. I've got my parents have my back to the point where they're prepared to do this, and this.
Currently driving to 2 different schools.
That's what I mean. That's exactly what I meant.
Yeah.
Mum and dad are prepared to do this.
Yeah.
And they're keeping me in the loop and they're letting me be part of this decision.
Yeah.
Like I matter.
Yeah.
Different kid, right? And then when you put it in a context like that, like how does that make you feel?
You're good.
How does that make you feel about that little girl you used to be?
Good. Yeah. Okay. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All of those stories sort of boil down to you watch parents parent their children how they were parented.
Yep.
Whether that's the overcorrection of it or the exact replication of it.
Yeah. And as we've spoken about before, the overcorrection of it is normally the long way around of
exactly. Arriving.
Yeah. At replicating it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just I refuse to be angry like that guy, my dad. And then all the steps you take to avoid that just creates more frustration. So you end up angry anyway. It's just you just took a slightly different path than the old boy.
That's it.
Yeah. Well, the camcorder's just told us that we're done.
I think so. I think we just got told that we're finished now.
And I can't think of many other ways to retell the same thing.
Like drive it home any further.
Yeah. Like, sorry, guys, if you don't get it at this point, it's on you.
Well, with that being said, be good.
Be kind.
Be your best self.
You've done it to yourself.
I know, I do it to myself again. That's okay. You can have it today.
No bar fights.
Yay.
See you guys.
See ya.